Welcome to episode 2 of No Party Line. I'm Andrew Neal, joined with Philippe Cicchini, candidate for Michigan's State Senate District 9. And we both, along with Kirsten, and the whole campaign team were out at the No Kings rally this past weekend. So without further ado, we'll kick it off there. Philippe, what were your impressions about the weekend, about the rally, and the people you talked to?
So I definitely felt motivated going into it because it was so covered in the media, and we knew that it was going to be a big turnout that day. And the sun came out; it was cold, but the opportunities were there, and we took advantage of them. We spoke with hundreds of people going down the line. We weren't just skipping; we went every single person down the line. We stopped, we talked to, we made sure that they know who I was. I wanted to know who they were, what their story was. We went to the No Kings rallies in Troy. We went to the one in Rochester because we were not going to be content just checking off the box and saying, okay, we showed up at one today and we got our pictures taken with a few people. That's not how we're going to conduct this campaign. And it was just awe-inspiring, honestly. I love talking to the teachers, the veterans, the students, everyone who was out there, the people who lost their jobs, everyone who was out there is inspirational in their own right, and that's why we're out there. The grandmothers who were out there to try to lend a voice to the world that their grandchildren will be inheriting down the road. The people who are just tired of the political indecisiveness going on, and it wasn't just Republicans were at fault. It was everyone's at fault. It was the Democrats are equally responsible for what's going on, and there was plenty of that too. And we talked to people that we didn't necessarily agree with, and that was great. We need those opinions. We need those interactions because that's who makes up the community. It wasn't just a single-minded type of people at this event. It was all walks of life from for different reasons who were there. People who traveled from all over the state. Talked to people from Petoskey who came down to Oakland County. I mean, that's crazy. So you never know who you're going to talk to at these rallies. It's one thing to think, oh, they're all like-minded, but you go to these rallies and you find people who are just frustrated for different reasons and so welcoming to talk to. Every issue came up, every issue, the environment, the whether it was the economy, whether it was gas, whether it was immigration, it was all on the table.
I'm getting a little bit fed up with the lack of accountability with our politicians.
Yeah,
I mean, they just seem to do whatever the heck they want.
yeah,
I mean, it's ridiculous.
yeah.
If I did a small percentage of what they do, I'd be in prison a long time ago.
So the environment's obviously very important to me too. I mean, what do you feel about the rollbacks that you're seeing, emission standards, things like that, letting corporations off the hook with what they're doing? I mean, how's that affecting you, and how angry is that making you on a local level?
Yeah, no, very. It definitely, so I work for a national org, but we have a ton of local partners here in Michigan and around the nation. And, it's definitely hitting the hardest right now. Those are the folks who don't have a lot of resources to rely on. And, anytime those, stripping of policy comes through, anytime funding gets stripped, it's harming everybody.
Yeah.
So solutions, locally right now, solutions are happening. That's where they're most effective because of a lot of the federal cuts that have been happening, but it's still rough.
I can't say enough. If you've not been to a rally, just go. These are people in your community. Those are the conversations that neighbors should be having again instead of, oh, they're at this rally. They clearly are thinking of this particular mindset or whatnot. Go out there. Talk to your neighbors. Find out what frustrates them. They might be the same things that frustrate you and you just can't articulate it. You never know. So
Absolutely. I liked the guy who had the Trump hat on. He had the outfit. He had his camera, and maybe he got in his car and went to the rally thinking he'd stir some things up. But his first thing he talked to us about, super nice guy, was just that he was pleasantly surprised by how kind everyone was, how polite everyone was, how willing to talk everyone was, and be on his whatever he was recording. So even someone who is, to your point, doesn't align with the rally's theme.
yeah,
In fact, might be the opposite of it. Went there and and to his credit, had enough of an open mind to have those conversations. He wasn't trying to start things up for nothing, right?
Exactly.
And that's the kind of presence we need. To your point, just go to the rally. Yeah, it's called a No Kings. Yeah, and yeah, it's anti-Trump. Okay, you don't have to be 100% anti-Trump to have a conversation with someone who is. In
Right.
fact, you should be. You should be going out of your way every once in a while to try and have a conversation with someone who you think will be open to having a fair conversation about something, so that you can both learn more about each other. And I was really encouraged to see at least a couple red hats throughout, but then also some people who probably are not easily identifiable as someone who is just going out there to learn more, and isn't necessarily endorsing anything or one side, but is just there because they want to be more politically informed.
And Andrew, that brings me to another point that I wanted to make sure that I brought up. Even if you're a Republican senator, House rep for a particular district, and you should be going to these rallies. These are your constituents. I'm not saying that Republicans should have been out there with a protest sign, but these are people who care enough. I mean, these are the people who are out there because of politics, exercising their First Amendment rights. These are the people that are in your district. And again, if I was a Republican, I would definitely welcome the opportunity to go speak with people, not to join in the same protest and have a sign, but to say, what are you so frustrated by? What are you feeling on a local level that you feel we can do a better job of? I don't think that that's problematic. I don't think that that's all that controversial. I think that would be so eye-opening if we had leaders who went to rallies that were not typically associated with their own political backgrounds, because it would show an olive branch of enormous proportions, honestly, saying, I'm willing to listen to you. I'm not only going to go to where people like what I have to say and clap when I talk, I also want to go where you might be frustrated, because I need to hear that. I need to do a better job of addressing your concerns.
Because after those conversations, regardless of how like-minded or not you were with them, there was a handshake, and and they walked away, hopefully feeling like someone who is interested in being a public servant is interested enough in having a conversation with them and shaking their hand and learning something, right?
Definitely.
And hopefully we did that for a few people who are rightfully so pretty disgusted by politics these days. And I think, the way that you went about a listening tour of walking down those lines and really asking people not only what they were there for, but what are the issues that matter most to them in their communities, is the first step of many, but the most important one in actually getting people to think that you care as a politician, right? Like that.
Listen, if you expect to be met halfway, you actually have to meet people halfway yourself. I would definitely like to, throw it back to you. Of all the people that we talked to, were there any conversations in particular that you remember that stuck in your mind as maybe a wow moment, something that you weren't expecting someone to say? Was there anything along those lines?
Yeah. I think the thing that surprised me most was the reaction that we got specifically, as a campaign who's going there to, while we really, made it a key point, and we talked internally so much about making this more about listening than it is about campaigning, right?
Right.
We weren't there to interrupt something. We were there to understand, and I really, really was encouraged by the amount of people that were open to an independent candidate. We're excited about an independent candidate, about the prospects of breaking up the two-party system, recognizing sometimes in real time the issues that the two-party system brings with it, the lack of checks and balances if two parties are either pitted on both sides and there's no in between and there's no compromise possible, or they come together on something and then there's no competition.
Right.
So people really recognized that and resonated with the idea of what it means to be an independent candidate, to have no no party affiliation.
Right.
And I don't think we would have necessarily gotten that same energy 10 years ago, right? Things
Hmm.
have shifted for several reasons in that direction. So I was most encouraged by all the conversations we had with people who were open to discussing their options beyond the party that they'd been voting for. And I'm sure that you felt the same way when someone said, well, I mean, I voted for Ross Perot. And,
Yeah.
like that was a really fun conversation because you're able to surprise people too with your responses, with your ability to listen and sort of relate to those people as well. What about you? Let's get into some of the conversations that stuck out to you a couple days post rally that stayed in your mind or maybe influenced the campaign moving forward.
So we talked to quite a lot of seniors. And if you were to just guess what seniors would want to talk about, you would think maybe Social Security. You would think maybe health, something health related. But what I was pleasantly surprised about, because it's an issue that is dear and close to my heart, is the environment. And a lot of them brought up the fact that they just want to make sure that we're taking care of the environment for their grandkids. And that was very touching and moving to me, because I think that that's a very selfless worldview that yes, I'm dealing with a lot right now, but man, do I care about the world that my kids and my grandkids are going to inherit. And that I felt was just moving. It was beautiful. And it's something that I think, regardless of your political affiliation, we have to always keep in mind that there are future generations who are going to have to clean up whatever mess that we are responsible for in the present day. And the environment is, clearly one of those issues in particular. It's physical, it's the air quality. There's a lot to it. And we're seeing right now a lot of deregulation, obviously, going on about emission standards. I mean, I have it right in front of me that, and this is something I've brought up before, but according to the American Lung Association, the Detroit metro area is the sixth worst in the nation for year-round particle pollution. That is frightening, right? And a lot of people that we talk to, like I mentioned, the seniors, but then we also talked to some Oakland U students. Environment was top of mind to them. So it's cross generational. It is a topic that is cross generational. Therefore, it is very important. So while a lot of people are talking about the economy and cost of living, let's not forget about some of these other things that are definitely cross generational and top of mind to people in our community. And I think the environmental discussions we had was kind of surprising to me based on the people who brought it up or before we even said anything. That when we asked them why were they out there, they said the first thing they said was because of the environment and for my grandkids. And I was moved by that.
Absolutely, and one of the themes nationwide, I think the media takeaway from these rallies, which took place everywhere across the country, was that it wasn't a single issue rally, and some people looked at that as something against, the organizations or the people who were getting together to put this on, and others looked at it as the point that we can do more than one thing. We can care about more than one thing at one time. And you're exactly right that while the economy is top of mind, while foreign wars and those type of things are getting the headlines, that people haven't forgotten about the things that they cared about before those things became the front page news.
Right.
Environment absolutely was one of them, and it leads into the discussion we had with one of the students you mentioned was about data centers and how not only the environmental impacts of that, but maybe we can expand that conversation about data centers into the wider implications of what it means for the economy, what it means for the environment, and what it means for the future of how we work and how we use technology, and the extent to which our communities are going to be allowed to be shaped by that future of technology. What are your initial thoughts on that conversation we had, and then just the broader topic of data centers coming into our communities?
Well, AI is here. I mean, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. That the world of AI is here, and it was slow coming with autonomous vehicles. I mean, it was manifesting itself in so many different ways. But AI is definitely here now. It is costing people jobs. There's that aspect of it. It's so there is the thing about AI is that it is really all encompassing. It is infecting. Well, maybe that's a proper word too, but it's definitely affecting employment, the economy, the environment. It's affecting a lot of different things all at once. Their particular concern, I think they did mention more than just one of those aspects, but it was environmental because they were talking about the proposal of the data center going right into the Oakland U campus. And I did look up on, did a little reading on that, and it is something that is scheduled to go forward at the end of 2026. And I mean, one of the encouraging things, I guess, about the plans going forward is that they said that the it's going to be a self-cooling, sustainable design. So what I'm seeing is that the project aims to incorporate sustainable design, including a closed-loop water-saving cooling system, which is huge if they can, because what a lot of people don't realize. And I was looking at this because it's something that affects, it was in the news, all these city council meetings getting overtaken by people getting angry about the data centers going into their particular communities. And I was wondering, okay, what would be the impact and energy wise? Everyone is familiar. If you've been on the internet anytime in the last, since forever, but especially in the last year, you've seen a lot of AI generated videos. And what I discovered, what I did when I researched this, the energy it takes to create a 5-second AI generated video is equivalent to running a microwave for an hour. Think about that for a second. That's just a 5-second AI video. So think about the people who are creating longer ones. And then I saw that if you create a video for 1 minute, it's like running a microwave for 18 hours. Now, eventually, try to think and imagine what a data center would look like if you had 5,000 microwaves running all day long. That's essentially the best way for people to envision what it's like to have an AI data center running 24/7. It would take, I mean, I've seen anywhere that it would require in one day the energy it would take to run 50,000 houses. And I've seen estimates even go into the hundreds of thousands, if not a million houses. But the amount of energy it would take to that it would cause the community to have to deal with and to compensate for is astronomical.
When it comes to AI, when you really zoom out a little bit, for so long, the internet has been sort of a retrieval system, right? Data centers were sent a file and they stored that file in one little spot in a server somewhere. And anytime anyone in the world needed to retrieve that, well, then you ping that server and you get that file, right? You retrieve it. It takes relatively low amount of energy output to do a task like that. I'm certainly no computer expert, so don't take my word for how I'm describing this. But the shift now, obviously, with AI is that it's moving to generative energy, right? This is, it needs to, a system that is generative and creating something new. There's nothing to retrieve, right? We're creating something new and storing that again. So the exponential increase in energy usage in the amount of data centers that are needed. Clearly, the tech billionaires are noticing the writing on the wall with where the future is going with this technology, and it requires this massive amount of infrastructure. And where is that going to go? The closer it is to you, actually, the more effective those systems will work for you. The further away it is in the middle of nowhere, the less effective. So it's a topic that I know we'll continue to follow closely, and that we may also be helping communicate and educate others as we learn more about this throughout the campaign, because it's only going to be a more sensitive issue and important for everyone, including us, but certainly the communities that are faced with having these centers to fully understand. Let's move on to another topic that we talked about with a lot of people at the No Kings rally, and it goes along with what you were talking about, the environment, about the future for our kids, for generations, education, right? This has implications in every aspect
Hmm.
of our life, is quality of education, teachers, and supporting the infrastructure that goes along with education. So, what are your thoughts on the conversations you had with people about education? I know we spoke to some teachers, retired teachers, students.
Yeah.
What was the general sentiment that you heard?
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of the cool thing about going out in public at these events, and not even just rallies, but when I would go to farmers markets, libraries, anywhere I went, you'd run into a teacher. They are so prevalent, and I love talking to teachers. You have so many decades of experience, retired teachers who've been, lucky enough to work in different school systems. Are able to compare their experiences that based on some jobs paid better, some jobs paid better. Someone had some school districts had more, they were more liberal to teach more to their abilities rather than teach to the test, for example. But yeah, I always love talking to teachers. I remember, I believe we spoke with a lady named Mandy, and she was talking about her husband. Her husband had been a teacher for a while, and talking about, some of the struggles when it came to just pay, salary.
Married to a teacher, state funding for education is always going down, and it's a struggle. And I've watched. He's been teaching for 26 years, and I've watched his job become less and less important and less well paid. You can't find teachers. There's a teacher shortage, and that has everything to do with the state budget. That has everything to do with the federal budget. That has everything to do with priorities, and they're just not making education a priority, and that's why people grow up and they don't understand.
So one of the things that I keep in my back pocket is knowing that Michigan ranks below the national average when it comes to average starting salary for teachers, and it's $41,000 a year. That's just a very difficult thing to be asking of teachers who it's not just a 9 to 5 job. The preparation that goes into it, the resources that they need, the training that they do in the summers. There's a lot that goes into it. So teachers are always top of mind. But yeah, the conversations we had, the gutting of the education system, obviously on a federal level, but then the problem that we faced here in Michigan last year was that the budget did not get passed until the end of September after the school year had started, leaving teachers and families and students in a lurch, not knowing if the free lunch program was going to be in place. And I mean, if you cannot provide a school with a budget over a month after school has already started, you're not doing the school any favors. You're not doing these teachers and principals any favors by not settling their budget until after the school year has started. And that's what happened last year. I'm a very active member in my girls' school PTO, and I can tell you firsthand there was so much confusion. Now imagine you have 500 families emailing the school all the time. Hey, are there going to be lunches? Are there, what about this? What about that kind of assistance? What kind of? It's chaos. So no, I feel for the teachers, the people who have to put up with the bureaucracy when all they want to do is teach. All they want to do is teach, Andrew. And you hear that. I mean, it comes through that they just wish that they would be given the resources they need to do their jobs.
The teachers, have mysteriously been kept out of the list of essential community jobs and
Yeah,
positions, right? We need a hospital in every community, which
right.
means we need doctors and nurses, and we need to take care of each other when we get sick, and there's a system in place for that. We need schools just as much to take care of the future, right? To take care of our future, our community's future, our neighbors' future, is educating everyone in an equitable way, so that it doesn't matter if you live on this side of the street or this side. You're getting a great education because you live here,
Hmm.
right? And I am always confused why it's the case that for a lot of the professions that are necessities in this world, they're very well paying,
Yeah.
right? Because we've recognized as a society that you have a special skill that not every one of us can do, and you deserve to be paid according to it, because it's also absolutely essential that we get this right.
Right.
And we've put that aside for too long. That
Right.
teachers have now become a punching bag. They've become political talking points. They become budget negotiations. It's surprising to me that we've gotten to that point with teachers, especially because everyone knows one or has a family member who is one or was. So it's very confusing to me. What do you think? I mean, we talk about the bureaucracy, the lack of ability to compromise, the lack of ability to find common ground in Lansing. What is it, maybe about education in particular, but maybe just in general? What do you think it is that's causing something so essential to be delayed?
Yeah. So without getting into the technicalities of the proposals last year, the competing proposals between the Democratic and the Republican proposals last year, what a lot of it hinged on was how much of the budget are we going to leave up to the individual districts to divvy up and figure out on their own? So what one proposal favored was no more cutouts. We're not going to have the cutouts in place for example, counselors, transportation in some cases, the free lunches, things like that. We're like, no more of those cutouts. We're just going to give the districts a bigger check per student and they can figure it out. The opposing viewpoint to that was no, no, no. Some of these cutouts are important enough that we cannot just hope that the districts will do the best they can. We would like to keep school counseling in place. We would like to keep the free breakfast and lunches in place. So I can understand, honestly, both sides of it, right? And there are arguments to be made for both sides. There are people who are just in favor of let the districts decide, but I'm telling you right now, my fear, and just talking off the top of my head, my fear of that obviously is if you write a blank check or a check for a certain amount and you just say do with it as you will, how much faith, Andrew, do we have in the thousands of schools around this state that the appropriate resources are going to get to their appropriate destinations and that school counseling will be available for the students who need it, right? That's important to me. That I took psychology in undergrad, and honestly, I have an affinity for therapists and people who are counselors, especially in schools, because that might be the only safe place for a lot of students to be able to discuss some of the things that are going on at home. So I absolutely am a proponent that school counseling should remain in place to the extent possible. But to answer your question, those were some of the competing interests that I knew were hangups with the budget last year. And again, it's just competing. I mean, and that's the thing, it's not a one size fits all. Some districts may be more affluent and may not need the free breakfast and lunch because they can provide those for their own children. But obviously, we know that that's not the case statewide. There are districts where they definitely benefit more from that so that they're not an added expense to the families who are already struggling. So I can see that argument. And that's the point of why we have these discussions. And that's also the point is why we have to be very familiar with our own communities because we have to be in touch with what the families in our particular communities are going through so that we can best address their needs when it comes time to vote on these things on the state level.
Absolutely. Well, it makes perfect sense, but it's finding the balance between micromanaging at a state level and leaving up a pile of money for the local communities to divvy it out and figure out what's best for them, which you can't do one extreme or the other, right?
Right. Right.
So I completely understand finding the balance and where things get delayed and where things take time, but at what cost? I guess it's at the cost of the students.
Yeah, really quickly though, but again, adding to the confusion though, is that you will have districts who may have had a surplus and could provide for the breakfast and lunches going into last year, and then the schools who did not. And then there was this inequity going on. Some districts are just doing better, not only education wise, but taking care of their students because they have the added resources that the lower income districts are struggling with. And we do not want to let them be left behind because we have people who let 3, 4 months go by without deciding on a budget. I mean, to me, that's just I don't want to use the word deplorable, but it's almost unconscionable, honestly, when you are seeing who is being affected the most. We're talking about kids from the ages of 3, 4, all the way up to 18. I mean, and like I said, some of these people who single parent families struggling to get by, we should not be leaving them in the lurch at the beginning of a school year. We should be able to let them know that they're going to be taken care of so that they can focus on their studies, just like the teachers can as well.
It is deplorable that our safety net gets holes poked in it every time we need to come together and sit in the same room and make a decision together, or
Right.
find a compromise, or just figure out what's best and everyone go for that, right? And we can
Right.
all agree that this is an obvious thing. It's oversimplified in that way, obviously. Nothing is that easy, but it does seem like the people who are left to figure it out on their own with no help
Right.
are the people who need the help the most, and the people who need our support. So I agree with that sentiment that it's extremely frustrating to sit from the sidelines. We're not in Lansing right now, but to see the ineffectiveness through which they can't find agreement, right? They can't find a topic. It's exemplary of the divisiveness and how far apart the two parties have become from each other. Almost meeting on the other end of a circle to the point where they're just not helping anyone sometimes, despite their best intentions.
Yeah, and what we're seeing obviously on a federal level right now with what's going on with the TSA workers, and hopefully this will be completely resolved by the time this podcast goes to air. But in the meantime, what I'm hearing a lot when I listen to the news and they're talking to people on the street and they're saying, well, how is it that Congress, and again, the federal level, but how is it that they're taking a 2-week vacation right now while TSA workers are going unpaid? And and that is true. Well, it's so funny that the people who are, and I hate using the word held hostage, but the people who are being held hostage by the indecisiveness of others, they're the ones going without the pay. They're the ones who are expected to go to work and to do so without a paycheck, whereas the people who are responsible for their predicaments are still getting a paycheck and not going to work right now. They're going to go on a 2-week break. Now explain that to me, right? How is it that that is the situation that we're in? And especially, okay, the TSA, these are the last line of security defense for people getting on planes. And these are the people that we are not paying right now, going on 2, 3 missed paychecks. Now imagine the morale, that the stress already involved on making sure that not a weapon or something gets onto an airline. Now pile on top of that, you're not getting paid, you're missing your bills, your kids' daycare needs are, you may have to find alternate means to take care of your kids because you can't afford daycare right now. Oh no, by the way, keep the plane safe on top of all that. That's a lot to ask of human beings. That it just is. How much stress do we want to give people who are already in a very stressful situation? So, I mean, hopefully, like I said, by the time this goes to air, that will be resolved. But unfortunately, I don't have high hopes that that's going to be the case because we
I
have a
don't
track
either.
record now. We have a track record in this country that there's no rush to get some of these people back to getting paychecks.
I was just about to say, and for anyone listening, think back to the last time before this episode of the announcement that there was going to be a shutdown. I mean, we hear this every year.
It's ridiculous.
I can't think of the last year that I didn't hear a looming, impending, or happening shutdown on a federal level.
Because the
States
reason,
have.
Andrew, the reason why is because they always just put in stop gaps that are only good for a few months at a time. They only give themselves 3, 4, 5, 6 months before they know for a fact they're going to run into the same issue again. So they knew in October and back in the fall that at the end of January we were going to run right back into this because that's the runway that they gave themselves. It wasn't going to be a year or two solution, a year-long solution. They really only gave themselves a 2, 3 month runway before we all knew we were going to be right back in the same predicament.
Right. It's getting to the point, I hope for a lot of people who are so sick and tired of this, and the fact that a shutdown is even a potential thing. That's a political leverage. That's something that someone could use for compromising or for getting what they want on a certain bill or for negotiating here and there is people's livelihoods, and that's just how wrong to manipulate a government structured the way that ours has been, and co-opt it for these political purposes and using the people as your pawns because well, I'll just shut down the government. Well, that's not actually something that's possible, right? When we say government shutdown, there are still several essential things that continue to operate, and people in those positions continue to get paid. You point out the TSA agents who don't, for some reason, as if they're not essential to a healthy operating America. And it's unsettling that we've gotten to a point that's something we expect, right? Every cycle, every few months, they kick the can down the road. Then there's a new shutdown. Then there's a new cycle to talk about that. And then we put a stopgap in place, and then we wait a few months to talk about it again. It's madness.
It is madness. And again, the thing is that there's no consequence to not resolving these things. For example, going back to the situation in Michigan last year with the budget, it was by law that they had to have something in place by July 1st. But the fact of the matter is, there's no consequence in place if they don't. And that's why it lingered, because there was no triggering after effect saying, oh, you didn't get it done by July 1st. Well, then this happens. That's not the case with the way our law is set up. We have this amendment, this budget amendment saying the budget has to be in place every year by July 1st. And if it's not, oh, well, I mean, it's as simple as that. There's nothing making them pass it by July 2nd, by July 3rd, by July 14th. And that's why it just lingers, because there is no consequence. And I'm not going to say that I'm in favor of some sort of affirmative consequence, but that's the problem when there is no consequence. Exactly. Is that, oh, I guess, well, we didn't do it, so what's the hurry now? Well,
you're a parent, and it sounds like that would be what a kid would do to manipulate a situation, is if they recognized immediately that there was no consequence for an action that they knew you didn't want them to do, but you didn't follow through on any sort of discipline or any sort of consequence that would come from it, then what do you think they're going to do the next time they're faced with that choice?
It's human nature. It's just human nature.
It is. It is. And the fact that we've got these big kids, these adult kids in office now who recognize that point that, well, we've done the shutdown 100 times since I've been in office. So there's been zero consequence. I'm not being threatened with, being primaried. My party isn't upset with me that we didn't get this done. They don't, it doesn't make a difference to them.
And I'm hearing, and a lot of the Congress representatives in Senate, the House, especially on the federal level right now, a lot of them are going on the news and they're saying, yeah, I'm volunteering to go without a paycheck. Well, that's fine and dandy. Okay, I see you trying to show some sort of act of solidarity with the TSA workers by saying, I'm going to give up my paycheck for as long as they're out of work. I get that. But that still doesn't fix it, because you can afford it. I mean, if you can afford it, it's not that big of a sacrifice. You're right.
The consequence, if we passed a law and the consequence was you don't pass a budget before a looming shutdown, and no one in Congress gets their paycheck until you do.
Yeah.
No one in Congress is going to care about that consequence.
Yeah.
Not as long as they can trade stocks.
Right.
And they can, not as long as they can do these other things to be millionaires when a paycheck, when an annual salary for someone in Congress is, I don't know, maybe six figures, maybe a little less depending on what the office is. So, I mean, it's not, I can't even think of a consequence that would be apt for putting an entire field of essential workers and employees out of work. And they're not out of work.
Right.
They have to work, right? They're being obligated to work without money. It's
and then they're quitting. About 500 different TSA workers have quit because they just.
What else are they going to do? Yeah.
You know,
what option do they have?
Right.
If you can't if any one circumstance of something, you need a lot of luck on your side to just continue working and not getting paid. You're going
Right.
to look at that and say, I literally can't make rent.
Right.
My water's going to get shut off if I don't have some money coming in, and I can't imagine what kind of financial strains and the extent to which people put themselves in debt
Yeah.
by doing what they see as a morally correct thing, which is continuing to work without a paycheck, taking out loans, asking, borrowing. I mean, these things are not easy to do, and it's demoralizing. They have a job. They
Yeah.
want to work. They want to
Yeah,
make
they do.
money.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not the type of people to ask for handouts,
Yeah.
and yet they're forced into a terrible situation. And they're certainly not the first and won't be the last, but that's why we're in this fight, right? We want to be a part of the change, to advocate for those people. And I think the rally this past weekend really energized us. We could feel there was some momentum, not in necessarily a direction of anything other than I I keep going back, and we heard other people voluntarily say this, enough, right? This is your campaign slogan, and it couldn't be more apt for the sentiment we got this past weekend at the rally. Was we've had enough, like the distractions and these things that are very clearly put in place to keep us distracted, keep us not focused on whatever we're not supposed to be focused on. Enough of just the on both sides too. I know this was a no kings rally, and I know that immediately you would assume that everyone loves the Democrats and hates the Republicans, especially their leader Donald Trump. Well, that's not the sentiment that I got walking away from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were really just so fed up with the status quo, with the way things have going, with the lack of common sense, from the local to the state to the federal level.
Hey, there were a lot of people who were fed up with Democrats for other
That's what I
for
mean.
reasons too. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, so it wasn't like you said, it wasn't necessarily a pro-Democrat type of rally. And a lot of people were pissed off at the Democrats too for their role in a lot of the things that are going on in the country right now. So,
And we heard some people, of course, said, to be fair, whoever's on the Democrat, whoever's on the ballot as a Democrat, that's who I'm voting for. Even if I don't know him or like him, I'm gonna plug my nose and vote.
yeah,
And it goes back to what we've talked about before about voting for someone, not against someone.
right.
And this is so important that whether it's the independent candidate, the Republican or the Democrat, the best thing you can do as an American who has the amazing privilege and right to vote is consider your options equally, do your research, and make a choice that's blind to their party affiliation if they have one. Who do you think is going to represent you the best?
Yeah.
Not who's leading in the polls, not
Yeah,
who,
yeah.
what's the implication for Congress, and well, it could swing this way, or maybe we don't get to impeach the president we don't like if we don't all rally behind this, whoever, whatever. They have a D in front of their name, so that's who we got to go for. I don't think we're going to see that, but any summarizing thoughts on
Yeah.
the rally and what to look forward to?
So something that you asked quite a few of the people when we were talking to them, because we asked them what brought them out there, what are their feelings on different things. And after they gave the bulk of their answer, you would ask them, could you see yourself voting for an independent, or what would it take for you to vote for an independent? And I felt that that was a very great opportunity to get some insight as to how voters are really thinking about voting and if they could vote for an independent. And I loved hearing that most of them said, yes, I could absolutely vote for an independent. And the opportunity was there a few times where they said basically to me, sell me on voting for you. And honestly, I right now would like to again try to sum up my 15-second elevator. It's going to go over 15 seconds, just but over 15 seconds. But basically, it's I'm not going to sell you that I'm the most successful business person who's ever lived. I'm going to sell you on the fact that, or at least I'm going to try to, I've been in your shoes. I have struggled. I have a family. I've lost my job. And not at any point did that make me a hateful, vengeful individual. It made me understand, and every experience that we have puts me closer and closer with what a lot of people are going through out there. If you're dealing with some of these frustrations with your schools, if you're dealing with not knowing if you're going to get a paycheck, or if you're currently not going with a paycheck, I know what that feels like. And I would imagine that if you want someone to represent you, right? And this goes beyond the people who are jobless. This goes beyond the people who are with families, right? But the point of the matter is, I'm willing to do the work because I've done it. I've been through it. I want to have these conversations. I will not forget the people in my district who elected me. I'm not going to take their vote for granted. I'm not going to take for granted the fact that we're having people who are struggling locally because of what's going on federally. And what you may have are leaders on a local level who are afraid to speak up because their party's in charge, or maybe they have political aspirations beyond their current lot, beyond their current office, and they don't want to rub anyone above them the wrong way because it may cost them funding down the road. I have none of those fears. I have none of those concerns. I am only accountable to the people in my district. That's who I want to be my boss. And that is why I feel that I am one of the most electable candidates on the ballot come November. Because I will fight for you and nobody else. No one else is going to be my boss. So that's my closing argument, way longer than 15 seconds. But that's the thing. I'm not going to sell you as the most intellectual, as the most successful person out there. I want to be the most real person out there. And that's the only way I know to be.
I may be a little biased being a part of the campaign, but I can certainly say that I was motivated, inspired, and energized by watching you interact with people fearlessly, walking up and shaking each hand and being open to the conversation that was about to happen, regardless of what they cared about or wanted to talk about. You wanted to talk with them about and hear them, and make them feel heard as well. And I know we had conversations walking from one place to the next, one person to the next about each of those conversations we just had. And the range of topics, the amount of information that you've got already, having done the research about so many of them. I learned several new things just from the conversations you had with people about the issues that I thought I already knew something about. So I really appreciated and saw the realness and the honesty, the integrity on display at that rally. And I know it's just the first of many things we're going to be involved in this year with the campaign. And I know we talked about as well about, this is a No Kings rally that we went to. We are not we are not only going to the No
Oh yeah.
Kings rallies, right?
Oh, and we got, and you know it, we got so many invitations from the people we spoke to go speak to their individual groups. I mean, a veterans group, a students group, a seniors group. I mean, that's what happens when you go out into the community. You talk to people who are parts of smaller other communities. And I can't wait to go speak to this veterans group and the students group and the seniors group and every other group that approached us and was more than happy to give us their contact information.
And we
And
should say too to anyone listening, if you are in District 9 in the Michigan Senate District of Troy, Rochester Hills, Utica, Shelby Township, Sterling Heights, those are the communities that we want to hear from. If you're involved in a group, if you have an issue or a topic or any involvement in a community effort that is meaningful, we'd love to come talk to you about it. And that doesn't need to feel like a campaign stop. That can feel like a conversation. If you invite us, don't worry about us going overboard with making it so political and you have to vote for me and what do I got to do to. No, we're in listening mode and always will be to the people of these communities. And if there's a group or an event or an issue that you'd like to invite Philippe to, please send us a message, reach out to us, because I know you want to get involved and in front of as many people as you can, to have the best understanding that anyone possibly could about the issues that matter to the people in your district.
Yeah, and honestly, these meetings, I don't have to be the center of attention. I would love to sometimes just go and observe and hear what are the concerns of the people who are members of this particular group. I don't care if there are only 3 people in the group. I don't care if there's 500. I just want to be there present and listening to what it is that matters the most to anyone who's willing to have me just come talk to them, listen to them, because that's what the campaign is. And we don't want to let too many cats out of the bag, but we have with Andrew and Kirsten a lot of ideas for the rallies, the festivals, where you're going to be seeing us for the next 7, 8 months, about how we're going to be continuing to involve the community members and the people who come talk to us in our campaign, because that's who we're doing this for. It's not going to be me on a stage always talking to people. If anything, I want to be listening more. That informs me. That makes me a better candidate. That makes me a more informed politician, because I will get the opportunity to hear what's important and on the minds of voters. So yeah, we are so excited about some of the things that we've been bouncing around about how we're going to be doing this with our booth, with our future interviews, with people that we come across. And again, just stay tuned, because this is only getting started right now. And you guys are the star, because you are the ones who will be determining who gets elected in November. And I'm not going to forget that.
Yeah, I'm so excited to take the No Party Line podcast, to take the Philippe Cicchini campaign outside of the office, outside of the rooms that we're in, talking now and getting out there and talking to the people and getting them involved. I'm fired up for the next few months and excited to see what those conversations are. And we really do invite and welcome the public to participate in that, regardless of who you support politically or anything. Just what do you care about? We want to hear from you. And we want you to know that this campaign is not about one issue, one candidate, one idea. This is about bringing all the things we can together that makes our community great, into a movement that helps influence a better politics in Michigan, right? A better political conversation, a better political climate, a Congress that is able to find compromise. And hopefully we can be a small part of a big change that encourages people to think independently, people to think outside of their party affiliation. And I appreciate the conversation today, and I'm excited for the next one as always. So any final thoughts, Philippe?
Just as always, whenever we have the opportunity to speak with the public, to speak with hundreds of people at a time, which was the case on Saturday, at multiple events, mind you. We weren't just in Troy, but we got in the truck, we drove up to Rochester and talked to the people over there. So it wasn't just checking off the box that we went to one rally. We went and talked to as many different people as we could at different rallies, and that's going to be our approach throughout this campaign. We're not just going to settle and do the bare minimum. We are going to go where the people are, and if they're in different places on the same day, you will see us at different places on the same day, because that's how we're going to win, and that's how we're going to get our message out there, and that's how we're going to get your message out there. So that's my closing thought for today, Andrew. Loving this podcast so far, sharing the interviews that we're having with the people on the street, and we're going to keep bringing those to you, so that, yeah, you're the star. That's who we're doing this for. So again, thanks for tuning into this episode, and we hope to catch you on a future episode of No Party Line.